Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Perfect RIA podcast. I am your host, Matthew Jarvis, and with me today on What Works Wednesday is Nick with Swell Financial. Nick has just hit his one-year anniversary, so he may be, in terms of experience, the youngest advisor we've ever had on the podcast, but I'm super excited to have Nick on today to talk about how he's been implementing things like minimums and value adds and meeting standards and surge and all these things despite having a brand new practice. So Nick, welcome to the show.
Matthew, thanks for having me. Honored to be here.
Oh, that's great, man. Well, tell us a little bit about your background, where you're at now. Tell us about your practice, just to give the listeners a little perspective on where you're coming from.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in the business since 2012. Started with Vanguard, got my Series 7, 63, realized quickly that was a call center. So hopped over to USAA, another call center. But this time I picked up my Series 65, my life insurance license, as well as my CFP. And so I realized at that point, hey, I want to get in front of people. I want to start building a book of business.
Yeah.
And so for the past 4.5 years, I was over at a hybrid RIA, Lincoln Investments, where I got a chance to start as an associate advisor, really start to meet face-to-face with clients, inherited a book, began to grow, and then worked my way up over the past 4.5 years to lead advisor. Quickly realized, hey, this is a great practice. There's different ways to do things. And so started my firm about a year ago. We're at the 1-year anniversary. So that's where I am today. Swell turned 1, Swell Financial. And we got a chance to, I think we're at now about a little over 20 clients, $7 million, and then built up a decent subscription fee as well, right around $1,500 a month. So not bad for a first year.
Yeah, not bad at all, man. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
We always talk about the broken road that gets you to wherever you're at today, right? To be able to try out call centers and hybrid options and different things, and now to have your own firm, man. Congratulations for pushing and pushing and pushing.
Thank you. Thank you. It was actually your book, right? Delivering massive value that I would say was the catalyst of change for a lot of things as I began to realize what type of practice do I want to have, who do I want to serve, and ultimately, how do I want to implement this?
I love that, man. Congratulations for being so intentional from day one. A lot of advisors, for better or worse, right? We get these bad habits put in place, and then we have to undo them. In fact, I just recorded an episode with a dear friend, and he's talking about having to graduate a bunch of clients who he now realizes aren't a good fit for what he's trying to do. And not that you won't run into that as well at some point, but to start from day one. So tell us a little bit, share for our audience. We have a lot of advisors listening that are in a similar situation as you. I got a message just this week from an advisor literally at Vanguard saying, hey, I'm kind of thinking about making the move to go out on my own. What advice would you have after 1 year in being totally on your own?
Oh, yeah. It's a great question. So I would say first and foremost, you're a financial planner. Make sure you have the financial backing behind it, right? We have to have operating expenses, figure out your budget, cash flow, certain things like that. But from there, once you're up and going, it's the soonest you can find your niche as soon as possible, right? I'd say that would be clear. So that way you don't have to backpedal going into year 2 or 3 or 4 and begin unwinding those clients who aren't a good fit. But then, Taylor Schulte and Justin Kinselli have been great from the Advisors Growing as Community network, where they've really helped advisors find their marketing lane and then find one, do it really well. And then, as they say, pour gasoline on it before moving on to the next one. So I think too many advisors right away are trying to find all these different avenues of like growing their firm, getting off the ground. They kind of just burn themselves out.
Yeah, that's a great reminder. And it's a great reminder to hear from somebody who is in earlier stages of their career. I think oftentimes it's easy for me to talk about like, well, you need to find your niche. Well, I'm 20 years in now and I've got a great reoccurring revenue and all these things. But from you to say, hey, from day one, and of course, to go to Taylor and to Justin, I don't know Justin as well, but Taylor's a good friend of mine and his marketing is so focused. And like you said, he's spot on and say, hey, listen, you cannot speak to everybody. In fact, you can't even speak to most people or even some people. You got to be just this crazy narrow. So tell us a little bit about your niche then, Nick, and how you decided on that, and then how you're pricing, how you're serving that model.
Yeah, great question. I think this is where like the growing pains of year 1 come in, where it's like, hey, I think I could be everything to everybody, or let me figure out kind of what my firm minimum is and then kind of raise and figure things out. And it's kind of trial by fire, trial by error.
Yes.
And so where I'm at today, I work with pre-retirees over the age of 55 within 5 to 10 years of retirement, at least $750,000 of investable assets, and having an ability to delegate, see the value of advice, want to work with an advisor, and have some more tax efficiency towards not paying less in taxes. So sound familiar?
It does sound, hey, go with what works. And it's a niche that needs so much help, right? They, as you know, as good as well as I do, right? They've spent their entire career, their entire lifetime saving up this money. Most of it's in an IRA account. no one's advised them on tax planning. It's an area that needs a lot of service.
It is. And I think in the first couple months, I also started working with what would be like my natural network. So being in my early 30s, recently married, getting a chance to just have people, as you become a firm owner, say, wow, there's a lot more credibility behind that. And so, hey, I want to work with this guy. And so early on, and it was Taylor who really helped me with this, saying, that's great that those are opportunities right there, but is this taking away and detracting from who you serve best? And so early on, maybe the first couple of months, you take a couple of clients. That's why I do have a subscription, but coming away from XYPN and your pre-con, it was like, I'm setting my fees for these clients who are not maybe an ideal fit, but they're still great people that I either refer out, or I'm going to increase the fee to a certain, multiple here so that I can focus truly on my niche.
Yeah. No, I think you articulated that really well, Nick, right? There's this, in a perfect world, right from day one, it would just be your niche. But in the real world, you've got a mortgage to pay and you've got a practice to run. And of course, you've got all this experience. You can deliver value across the spectrum. So I love that. Like, all right, if I'm gonna try to do these two, at least initially, so I can pay my bills and deliver value to everyone, I'll charge a subscription fee here, and then I'll do something else with what's going to be my ultimate niche.
Absolutely.
So with year one behind you, it doesn't feel quite right to say year one. Obviously, you have a lot more experience than 1 year in the industry, right? You've very well depth of experience. Year one behind you, what does year two look like as you're kind of planning? We're recording this in November. I'm not quite sure when it airs, but as you're looking at 2023, what is on that horizon?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for me, it's getting dialed in on my marketing effort, where I want to go with what that lane is. For me, I really enjoy writing. And so I've challenged myself to continue reading as many books as that pre-retiree space niche kind of has, educating myself on that and coming up with blog posts or newsletters almost every week. And so really trying to become an expert in that space and not burning myself out on any of the other avenues, and then growing and scaling. So I'm not sure if I'm going to kind of graduate any clients out, but I have, especially as I mentioned earlier, coming away from that pre-con, set my minimum fee at the $5,000. And so, if there's anything kind of below that, I'll refer that out. And then just getting laser focused on, who I want to serve, and just getting dialed in on continuing to learn and enhance and do that personal development.
I love that. We love that. Well, I'm glad that you're plugged in with Taylor. Of course, he's got great written content as well. He really understands that. He did a whole rework of our website, Jarvis Financial, which was really powerful. Have you ever heard of Justin Welsh? Justin Welsh. He does a ton of content primarily on LinkedIn that drives traffic to his. Here I'm like in the coaching. I know we're on a podcast, but anybody listening, Justin Welsh has this phenomenal LinkedIn presence, and all of his LinkedIn work specifically drives people to his newsletter. And so his LinkedIn is like, instead of me, I just make like whatever dumb thing I feel like putting on social media. His is very intentional, driving traffic. So for someone like yourself that loves doing the written content, might be an interesting thing to check out.
Yeah, just might, for sure.
I love it. So how about, you're going to get tighter on the niche. You're going to focus more on your written content, which is phenomenal. How are things like surge meetings or value adds working in this new environment? In other environments, you didn't have as much control. Now you are master of your company. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah, it was actually at the pre-con. Libby got a chance to talk about the onboarding process and what that looks like. And so I've kind of just taken almost like a scalpel to mine right now and figured out like where are clients falling through the cracks? Yes. Have I over-communicated everything? And where is there areas for kind of improvement? And so I think we talked a little bit about it before the show today, but it's funny once you start implementing meeting standards and you stick to them, right? And you communicate to your clients, all of a sudden, whether it's clients, prospects, the meetings run better, clients are more engaged, they value your time, and most importantly, more things get done.
Yes. Yeah. Especially would you have any team members, Nick? Are you running solo right now?
I'm solo right now. I want to get to a certain kind of level of AUM, but I would say my first hire would probably be a virtual assistant. Because as I'm looking towards kind of optimizing growth, that's probably where I could kind of delegate out, is still doing the paperwork. And, the temp I use is great, but I'm realizing, you can kind of get caught in the minutia of just doing work that's under a certain value.
Well, I mentioned that just because I love that you're being this intentional when right now it's I don't say just you, but it's you, right? It's an army of one. Mm-hmm. And so it's very easy, as to get pulled into like, I have to do all the tasks. I wear all the hat, but that doesn't mean that I'm just going to willy-nilly throughout the day and whatever kind of surfaces to the top, right? You're still being very intentional. And Libby Greiwe's work, Libby was just on the Michael Kitz's podcast. Her process stuff is phenomenal and she's a great friend. And so I'm glad you're implementing that she recommended.
Yeah, and it was something that she said during the pre-con event over at XY in Denver, which was within the first 100 days, your client or prospective client becoming a client is evaluating whether or not they're going to send you more business. So it's first 100 days and whether or not you could be remarkable. And so dialing in that process and making sure nothing slips through the cracks is something that I really want to take into year two.
I love that. And whether her 100-day number is exactly right or just a rule of thumb doesn't really matter. It's a great lens. Like, all right, well, this is the day they agreed, right? June 13th or whatever the day was. I've got 100 days to really knock it out of the park. And of course, an advisor like you, Nick, you're going to knock it out of the park continuously. But boy, that first 100 days really makes a difference.
It really does. It really does. And, I've also found like my prospective client meetings, right? Being in that hyper growth phase as a new advisor, trying to build kind of a practice and scale and efficiency, so on and so forth, is being able to have some meeting standards, right? Around who gets in, who gets out, what type of clients do you want to work with, and are they following through on the things that you're asking them, right? And so after we get off the introductory phone call, there's, the list of items that I'm going to send to them before they go into the discovery meeting. And what I've personally found since I began to kind of implement that and tighten up the guardrails is that I feel like I could have a really good bearing on whether this is going to be a great person to work with or not, based off of how they send the documents back, if they answer in a timely manner, is it organized? And so I think a lot of the head trash I had maybe a year or two ago was you want to meet with everybody, right? You want to have that new client. It's exciting. You're growing your firm, but oftentimes it's kind of, I would say, a little bit of foreshadowing to what the relationship's going to look like.
Yeah, that's a great point. Are they an organized delegator or is there's something else going on? Now, Nick, something I know that you mentioned that you use in your meeting process, talking about your meeting standards, is Loom videos. You're a real user of that. Tell us just a little bit about how you're using Loom, whether it's in the prospect process or an ongoing client meetings. I'm always curious about kind of different ways to communicate with clients.
Absolutely. So I'm using it in both. I'm using Loom in the client prospect process after our initial meeting, where I'm getting a chance, like I'd say after the vision meeting or the discovery meeting, where I'm getting a chance to kind of deliver, walk them through the one-page financial plan that I present to them at the end, and get a chance to really add value, showcasing some of the things that I want to expand upon, but not have a really long email. And so Loom is a great tool to kind of further personalize advice through a delivery format where they get a chance to see my face, hear my voice, see all the systems and operations that we use, and then walk them through, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Client, here's what you can expect. Let's walk through this together. What I really like from the client process, though, is if I've just come away from a surge meeting, we'll say, and I have a big, long email that I want to recap on everything we've just talked about, or if there's something big coming up that maybe doesn't necessarily warrant a meeting, but it's, I would say like a bigger topic, whether it's Roth conversions or tax loss harvesting, something that could get lost in the details, I'll send a quick Loom video explaining it, breaking it down, keeping it short, between 2 to 4 minutes, somewhere in there. And then the great thing is you have that accountability and that timestamp. You can see if they logged in, if they have questions, and it's just another touch point and value add.
Well, I love that. Yeah, we started using those in my office recently, and the feedback has been phenomenal. At first, I thought, and I think it's an easy trap to fall into. I thought, well, this median of video is the same as me writing the email. But Nick, to your point, it's really not. And I think guys like you and I that love to write, we can really get some long emails, right? Really pontificate on those things. But the client doesn't want that, right? That's why they've hired us.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love that. What are some of the other things that you found in either your prospect process or in your client process that, in addition to Loom, that you feel like have delivered really value or have been really valuable to your clients and prospects?
Yeah, I love the one-page financial plan. Yeah. I'm a bit e-money user. I'll dabble in Right Capital as well, because I came with the tech stack with XYPN. But outside of being a great visual, no one's going to read the 30, the 40, the 50 page financial plan. It looks great. It's great for optics. We could wear our fiduciary hat and just, beat our chest for a second, say these are great financial plans, but they're going to read maybe 1 or 2 pages of that. And so, I think it goes back to the analogy, if we can't explain it or draw it in crayon, right? What does it look like? And so what I found, I'm sure there's some research on this, but kind of key areas that people really focus on. So whether that's net worth history, savings rates, goals that they're trying to accomplish both short and long term. I think there was one study, it's probably done maybe 3 or 4 years ago, but it measured financial advisors who charge for one-time plans. And 2 years later, or however many years later, the success rate of those topics and recommendations that were implemented by the client once you handed it to them.
Interesting.
And I want to say it was broken down into clients who had completed 2 or more of the tasks, 3 or more of the tasks, and then none of the tasks. And it was 10 recommendations provided. And I want to say it's something like under 20% of the clients had completed at least 2 or more, which was really interesting, which means that our clients are paying for implementation, right? They want to get things done. And so what I designed with the one-page financial plan is, what are the most important things that we want to accomplish? What is the purpose and the why that drives your entire financial plan, right? And how have we measured that? And what's the success we've been making? And can we put that on one page?
That's an interesting bit of information there, Nick, right? So sometimes I think we feel that we've got to get every recommendation and every action item from here till 40 years from now, right? In year 39 of the plan, what's going to happen? And to your point, really, we need them to implement day 1 of the plan, right? Because if day 1 doesn't happen, the rest isn't going to matter for much.
Exactly. And it's always great. It goes back to like the dishwasher rule of like, this is my one-page plan. And what I'm actually doing, Matthew, with clients is I'm taking that one-page plan that we created at the onset of the relationship, and I'm bringing it back into the semi-annual review meeting. I'm bringing it into the next surge meeting to say, especially in down years like this year, or years there where there's just not a whole lot of activity around the planning. Hey, what are things that we've done for you lately? What are things that we can cross off and say, measurably, here are things that we've done.
That's so great. And because it's one page, right? You're limited on your verbiage, right? You can't get too verbose because you've got one page, unless your font's getting really small, I guess. And of course, Dick, as I'm sure you do, you could always add a second page, right? You get through the first page, great news. That was the low hanging fruit. Now we're going to go to round 2 or 3 or 10 or however long that relationship goes.
Exactly. And when you have those engaged clients, they're now coming back saying, hey, can I add this to the plan, or let's cross that off?
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Well, Nick, this podcast is all about taking action, and I really appreciate you sharing some insights on your practice. What are some action items that you would give to our listeners? What are some things that they could implement or that you wish you had known to implement earlier on?
Yeah. I know we talked earlier about kind of finding your niche, finding your marketing lane, and really speaking to that. But then I would say go back and kind of label out what are the value adds you're providing to your clients, right? So I know for me, it's a client cadence calendar where we're going to kind of mark out the entire year, break it down into 3 meetings and say, what are the things in order for you, Mr. and Mrs. Client, that's most important, where we're going to start, and go from there. What are kind of the beneficiary reports, the income guardrails, all these different things that we're adding value? Because, I think when we meet with our clients 2 to 3 times a year, and let's just say it's 1 to 2 hours at a time, that's 6 to 8 hours a year you get with that person or that couple. And so being able to expound and add more value there. So really listing out what are the things that I'm delivering on a systematic basis that drive value to that relationship.
I love it. I hear that from so many advisors, right? The importance of map out your calendar, whether it's your surge calendar, or in this case, your value add calendar, your contact calendar, all of that, and then have it in a place where you can reference it. It helps in so many ways. So
yeah. And then I would say kind of last is with Loom, be yourself. Clients want to see you. And so whether that's something as corny as a birthday message or a big celebratory kind of milestone, it doesn't have to just be financial jargon or kind of industry related tips. Let it be about, playful things as well.
I love that. Well, Nick, congratulations again on hitting your 1-year anniversary of your new firm. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with the audience, and for all of our listeners. Until next time.
Hey, thank you so much.